to tell us, one of the youth, to tell us in less than a minute, what was the main takeaway of yesterday? What have you learned yesterday? And start table prepares. I want to also give one of the elders also to point out one key point, takeaway of yesterday. Yesterday was quite very engaging. I was following this morning on Ilepa Facebook and some of our social media influencers that are here on their post, and they post very critical things. So I want us to begin with that. My friend's table, one of you, and where's the mic, please? The mic, Ilepa team, please get a mic, Elias. So we'll have two people just in a minute to give us their takeaway. And actually I've seen somebody has already raised a hand, and we can begin with him, and then we come to this table, and then we can also give one elder and one lady also to, in a minute, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone.
Morning to you.
My name is William. My name is Tipis William. One of my takeaway was from the Director, Minority and Marginalized Communities Unit, that is Honorable Josephat Lowey. And maybe I can put in an African proverb that a cat that dreams of becoming a lion must change or must lose its appetite for rats. Actually, the explanation is to achieve greatness, we must abandon small habit, distraction, and limitation that hinders our progress and require significant shift in mindset and transformation.
Very philosophical.
Just to explain again, he mentioned about vulnerability. That the marginalized community, we the Maasai, for example, we became marginalized because of the colonial dispossession in our lands. But the funny thing is that we are still selling the same piece of land again. So it's time to take action now to make sure that we control the habit, so that we come back again to our superpowers status, as said by Director Kimarin Oleriamit yesterday. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Oletipis. If you want to be, if you are a cat and you want to be a lion, and then you have to assume or forget the appetite for rats. Thank you. I see people, but I don't want to open that, but thank you for the willingness to do that. So I say there is a table here that was the first to point out, if one of you want to say something, and then one elder and one lady, and then we will close this in less than a minute. Sally.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Sally Kotikash, and my key takeaway yesterday for indigenous-led research is that indigenous-led research is a vital opportunity to reverse the era of capacity building to start at the grassroots level. For the Maasai saying goes by, Olopeny oyolo olepi lengitengenye, or rather we can say that Matai Aria and Olopeny. In this context, that is the main thing we are talking about. And to interpret that, it means that for those who belong to the land, they know best how to care for it. And therefore, top-down policies may not work effectively for the indigenous people. For the Maasai, the land is not just soil. It is life, it is heritage, it is future. And through indigenous-led research and education, our communities bring lived experiences in surviving droughts.
Thank you, Sally.
Climate shocks.
I see actually
sustaining ecosystems.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
And Professor Sina yesterday said, "Memanyayu, meleno. You cannot go leave a place without scouting or spying." Any lady, so that I invite Oleriamit to take us through a very interesting session. Any lady that want to tell us one takeaway. The ladies who are here, based on the Mentimeter yesterday, they were 35%, I'm 40%. So the 40%, any takeaway yesterday? The ladies? Okay. Oh, that table or you? Okay, so because the ladies have not are still thinking, we can give an elder there. Okay, I see my sister there. So maybe after our elder behind, I will give our sister here to point out one key takeaway. One key takeaway. Without data, you cannot advise government.
So one key takeaway I managed to get from Honorable Loe Josephat, and I've discovered that he's the head of a minority, and one thing that shocked me is that 60% of land in Kajiado has been sold. Now, if research can be articulated with government policies, then the executive takes over and implement what research finders have found, then maybe we shall be able to get solutions to land problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, our elder, and Mike to our sister here. Your one takeaway, and thank you for okay, the ladies that were here before you came were still thinking on one takeaway. One takeaway for you, please.
Good morning. My name is Nadupoi. A key takeaway for me, at least one of them, is that indigenous people-driven research gives better outcomes in terms of addressing challenges facing the planet, and particularly also indigenous people.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I want to invite, oh, there is another one. You are protesting. Okay. So you can, I can invite Oleriamit to take us through the next session, but as Oleriamit comes, you can point out your key takeaway.
We are not protesting, we are just asking for another chance.
Yeah.
I am Simpanoi Lesarge, and my takeaway is we can do our own research and inform the world instead of the vice versa. Thank you.
All right, we can do our own research. That's why we are here, to decide and to enhance what some of us are already doing. I have seen the entire here, but I told him he always lifts his hand offside. Like yesterday we said no to him. I'm tempted to say no. In 1 second, yes, in the interest of fairness, we'll give you so that you do not leave the conference always receiving a no as you raise your hand. As the mic finds his way, good morning. Anda sopa. Habari yenu? All good? Rested well? Okay. Daya? Or even the tech people have, have conspired to deny Ntaya the opportunity. Please, can you give him sound in his mic? Okay.
Well, one of my most profound takeaways from yesterday's deliberation is that undeniable facts of data, information, and evidence in shaping decisions and policies is very critical. If you don't have data, you will not be able to advocate for your rights. Thank you.
Excellent. Indeed, very central to the discussion here. One of the first places of erasure of indigenous people interests and rights and knowledges is through data. Silencing through data. Erasure. By the way, the state, the policy actors, and I think the market only understand text language, written stuff. We tell stories, they rarely have appetite for our stories. So if we don't document, and that perhaps also explains why we've taken a while to communicate effectively, because the bureaucracy privileges text language, written If you don't write, you may not be heard. So yes, welcome to day 2, ladies and gentlemen. We had promised to start with a Mentimeter, but we will use it as an icebreaker after the first session. So we have 4, hopefully not elongated sessions, 4 sessions for the day. Number 1 on practical experiences in promoting indigenous-led research and education, with a keynote address and some panel reflection. And by the way, a panel is not to give an entire presentation. It's really a short, concise reflection on the agenda of the day. And that's why there are no PowerPoints. So it's you to choose which points to prioritize within the given minutes. So yes, we'll have that one session on practical lessons on uptake of indigenous-led research and education. And then we have a session on finance. We cannot do this without resources. So what are the trends in catalyzing access to resources to support indigenous-led research and education? And there will be also a keynote contributor and some panel reflection. Then the last sort of input session is on the place of publication and communication. Research that is not effectively communicated is as good as not existing. So we must not only think about the process to there, but what happens after the outputs of research. So there'll be a session on publication and communication. Also with a keynote address by one of our distinguished professors also present here. Actually, all of them by distinguished professors and researchers in our midst. And then there will be a panel reflection. And finally, there will be a breakout session on actionable outcomes, which we really want to encourage every one of us to go and contribute. There will be group work, one on youth, one on scholars and researchers and research institutions, another one on community leaders. And then finally, we will have a cocktail, mocktail, depending on what you're interested in later in the day. How does that sound? Are we together up to there? So to kick us off, we have Lawrence Belati is in the room. Lawrence Belati is one of our distinguished indigenous people leaders. We've been with him in the trenches for years. Now he's in the conservation sector, leading one of a very innovative conservation approaches in the Mara landscape. While coming from Kajiado, he is now based here promoting community-based conservation. And he is a very passionate land rights activist. Occasionally he gets tempted to run away from conservation, but he's there for now. So allow me to bring to you our moderator of this morning's session, Lawrence Olembelati. Please appreciate him as he comes. I encourage the panelists, please keep to your minutes so that we optimize our engagement. Choose what to emphasize. Karibuni, asante.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
I want to see your activeness by show of hands. If you are in this room and you are part of us today, could you just wave me? Now you look like you have taken some good tea. Yes, my name is Lawrence Olembelati, and I come from Kajiado, and currently I'm working with conservation industry at the Mara as the general manager. And I am managing 2 conservancies by the name Onkishu and Mbokishi. These are two conservancies at the Northern Mara ecosystem. And before I came to the conservation industry, I was in the human rights industry, being a land right advocate, or let's say activist, that is the well-known name. I've worked for Mpido for several years. That is where I grew up and learned a lot. And thereafter, I went to the Maasai Mara Wildlife Conservancy Association, where I worked there for several years, about 10 years. As the land administrator, which my key role was land governance, land management, where I was assisted in developing a lot of management plan, including the Mara ecosystem management plan. And that is my knowledge and experience. And this time, I want to really appreciate ILEPA for the good organization and the good meeting, and again for giving me this opportunity to be the moderator of this wonderful session. So thank you very much. Yeah, it has been elaborated by Kimaren that our session is the role of the media, communication and publication in promotion of indigenous-led research and education. And we will start with a keynote address from one of our own, Mr. Kiriga. I think he's in the room. Are you around? Ah, my good friend. Clap for him as he comes. Sorry, I'm not used to that other name, but I know he's a good guy. And I've worked with him. We've done good research when he was in McGill. And so you clap for him as he comes. And Mbaka Afike. You see, it's our culture. We keep clapping until the person is already in the platform or... Yeah, karibu sana Kiriga, and I think you will do justice to us by telling us more about yourself. You will introduce yourself more, and then you have a few minutes to give us your keynote address. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Habari za asubuhi. Sopa. Muriega. Bonjour. Thank you so much. Thank you, ILEPA, and everyone that has been involved in organizing such a timely, necessary, much needed, invigorating, and insightful conference. And thank you to everyone for being here, not to simply attend or participate in this conference, but rather to think, reflect, and reason together at a time when we are faced with planetary crisis, what some have called polycrisis, in reference to the multiplicity of the crises we are faced with today that are deeply felt on our African continent, and especially in indigenous territories such as Maasai land, where we are gathered today. So my name is Kariuki Kiriga. I'm assistant professor at the University of Toronto. I teach in the School of Environment and African Studies. I pursued my education undergraduate in the Netherlands and master's, and I did my PhD at McGill under Professor John Galati, working very closely with many people here, from Steve Moiko here, Kimaren, and many others who were involved in our institutional canopy of conservation. And I'm going to say more about that. And I've been doing research in Maasai land since 2017. Actually, before that, since 2008, where we met with Kimaren, and I will tell that story as a segue into illuminating some of the discussions that I'm going to have today. I was assigned the duty of talking about the evolution and future trajectories of partnerships around indigenous-led research and education, including the role of academia in centering self-determination. So I have some notes here that I'm going to refer to, and I'm going to start. And I have 15 minutes, so I'll try to keep to time. So this conference brings together what Fanon termed as Les Damnés de la Terre, that is the damned of the earth, which has been popularly translated as the wretched of the earth. As Louise Gordon explains, it is important to differentiate between the damned and the wretched, in that colonization and enslavement were not accidental occurrences, but rather a mode of manufactured violence. It is remarkable, therefore, that one of the leitmotifs in this conference thus far has been decolonization, as we saw yesterday. I would like to honor ILEPA's generous invitation by attempting to make a humble contribution towards thinking about decolonization through a discussion around moving from epistemic violence to epistemic justice and freedom. I intend for my contribution to, in several ways, address objectives 1 to 3 of this conference, for those who have been paying attention to the conference agenda, and to prepare the ground for objective 4, which will be largely addressed in the discussions that will follow later today. So objective 1, of course, is fostering national, regional, and international awareness of how indigenous peoples' knowledge and land stewardship practices are solutions to biodiversity conservation and climate change mitigation and resilience overall well-being. And second is demonstrating reasons why indigenous people's self-determination in developing and implementing research projects is crucial for unlocking the biodiversity and climate solutions in enhancement of well-being. The third one is about the youth energizing early career indigenous scholars and leaders, non-indigenous academic institutions to partner with indigenous peoples, including through piloting Pact's first ever youth training. So the fourth one is creating strategies and logistics for ensuring indigenous people's research, education, and climate, biodiversity solutions, and overall aspiration towards well-being can be financed directly and sustainably by funders, which will be discussed later today. So I wish to address the focus of the keynote, that is the evolution and future trajectories of partnerships around indigenous-led research and education, including the role of academia in centering self-determination among indigenous peoples through personal stories, experiences, and importantly, encounters as a way to illuminate what would have been otherwise theoretical reflections on African philosophies of knowledge through a discussion of epistemology, ontology, cosmology, and pedagogy in our collective quest for epistemic justice and freedom. In this way, I hope to follow Sabelo Ndlovu Gatsheni's and others such as Chika Ezenye Siobu, the late Ngugi wa Thiong'o, calls to deprovincialize African indigenous ways of knowing and being in the world. I started with my journey in research in Mount Kenya, where I was hired as a research assistant in a project that looked into the impacts of hydroelectricity connection amongst rural households. And I reflected on how the researchers get to know so much about our people. Yet, at the time, I found out that I knew solely about my own village. And this motivated me to explore research further. In high school, we were taught you need to become a doctor, engineer, or a lawyer, and very few professions. But none of us was told you can be a researcher, you can be a professor, you can be an activist. And so that research introduced me to a new world, which I've gladly pursued today. So I'll hold off from diving into research as research with the prefix re, one that can be thought of as in remembering, for example, that is remembering as a way of bringing together memories into a sensible constitutive whole. And to think about research as a process of knowledge production and thinking about the politics of education and knowledge production. Let me start with the partnerships in indigenous research. So I met Kimaren in Elangatawas on a hot day in June 2009 through the University College Utrecht Africa Field Studies program, which brings students from the Netherlands to East Africa to engage firsthand with local communities and gain experiential learning and move beyond theory and to practice. So I started off as a research assistant, as I've said, and Kimarin was teaching in the program in many ways to provide what we may say a Maasai indigenous perspective and to address many of the issues that the program sought to cover. And I believe Kimarin has continued to offer his services to the program to date. So this shows that in that program, in many instances, many of us start off as research assistants, and rarely does it happen that someone proceeds from that, and you may find that we have people who have worked as research assistants, but we haven't seen opportunities being opened for them to proceed beyond being research assistants. So what does it mean to partner in research then? So historically, as Bernard Magubane notes about research during the colonial and early independence periods, is that research by mainly white male researchers was organized around Eurocentric categories and indices that are informed by Western ways of knowing that were woven within a violent colonial system. And this was replicated in the ways that yesterday was mentioned, that we are spoken of as indigenous peoples, as people from without and people with nothing, and what we call as being authored in research. And if you think about equity in research, this moving from research assistants to research partners and co-producers of knowledge is a journey we have to make. So how can this be recognized, not simply in the acknowledgement section, but rather in the publication and citation practices as well? And I appreciate that later we have a session on publication and citation practices. Yesterday we talked about funding in the Mentimeter. Funding stood out as one of the key aspects that was highlighted by everyone in the room that needs to be addressed, or one of the challenges in research. So funding often dictates the topics that are covered, and local researchers are invited in the research project as opposed to shaping what should be investigated. A primary role of education ought to be to address societal challenges that we face, and indigenous peoples and local communities know fully well the challenges they're faced with. Therefore, research projects ought to be co-designed with indigenous peoples and followed through to implementation. One such project that accomplished, in my experience, a great deal and meaningful engagement of members from indigenous and local communities was the Institutional Canopy of Conservation project that was led by Professor John Galati, whose name was mentioned here yesterday by our elder, Bonasimo Olesimo, who is at McGill University, which was co-designed and implemented in partnership with local NGOs such as ILEPA, Soralo, Mpido, and Impact in northern Kenya. Importantly, I'm a beneficiary of this project, together with several other Kenyans and Tanzanians, including our Maasai friends, who are now doctors, such as Dr. Salau Rogei, and also in the room, Dr. Clarkson Lugusa, who's with us here today, who have gone on to pursue, and others who have gone on to pursue master's and undergraduate studies in various universities across the world, in Kenya and abroad. While of course we associate knowledge production and research with universities and institutions such as the World Bank, our partnerships so far show how local organizations and communities are critical in the process and research, and more importantly, implementing research findings in ways that seek to address everyday realities, everyday life realities on indigenous and local communities. Working with ILEPA, for example, has only further underlined the significance of indigenous NGOs in fostering the well-being of communities near and far, and now spearheading a conference that brings together activists, public servants or the state, youth, and of course, academics. What this congregation demonstrates is that research, knowledge production, and implementation is a collective effort, and everyone has a role to play. I think Antonio Gramsci's, who's an Italian philosopher and politician, postulation that everyone is an intellectual comes to bear in this conference and the discussions that have transpired here so far. Of course, for Gramsci, which is in a paper we're working on in collaboration with Kimarin, is that there are traditional and organic intellectuals where the former support the status quo while the latter emerge in response to current politics and challenges and are often engaged in counter-hegemonic work. My research in Maas Island, I think this is a fitting segue into my past and ongoing research in Maas Island, which has been mainly recently in Odrukesi, where I've been working closely with the Odrukesi community, and I'm happy to have in our presence here two of our research officers who have been helping us with research, and also in Sekenani, where I've been working closely with the National Maasai Conservancy. So among the key issues I've set out to understand are land governance and conservation governance, especially with wildlife conservancies, which includes land subdivision and privatization, and its effects on communities in Maas Island. Following from yesterday's discussions, we can ask, what does land become when we subdivide? This is not a new question, as our elder again, Mr. Simeo, noted in reference to Mark Rutter's work on selling wealth to buy poverty, and others such as the late Dr. Esther Mwangi, Professor John Galati, have all conducted research on this issue that dates back to the collapse of the former group ranches and the transition to the private individual tenure. One may ask, why do we contribute? Why do we continue to conduct research on an issue that has been studied? Well, one way to answer that question is that land loss through land sales following privatization continues to be a challenge in Maas Island. and if indeed education and research ought to address existing challenges or societal challenges, then we indeed need to continue doing research on these issues. Second, the modes of dispossession through the market evolve over time, and this is not a surprise, given that as researchers of capitalism, we know fully well that capitalism continually evolves to expand both horizontally and vertically, to render into commodities previously non-commodified things, and to extend into frontiers, which arguably function on the margins of global capital. In this way, what appears to be local is intricately linked to the global, and therefore understanding what is happening in Maasai land requires us to comprehend the dynamics outside of the immediate locales. It is therefore the responsibility, especially of our researchers and academics, to really illuminate the insidious ways in which capitalism continues to penetrate indigenous spaces. This is also the case in wildlife conservancies, which is a really good illustration of how global capital flows happen. I'm going to delve into other factors that we need to consider, which is the training of youth, that is moving from research assistants to researchers. How can we create those pathways that you're not a research assistant forever, right? And that will lead us to self-determination by generating our own knowledge through knowledge, starting with knowledge co-production and our self-knowledge production. And what is knowledge? What is education? In many ways, we see that land conservation have often separated and operated through rationales that have been influenced by colonial ways of thinking and relating. Yesterday, Professor Dr. Andy White talked about indigenous ways of relating. And if we think of life as about social relations, we can see in the ways in which this kind of separation is violent. Because if you imagine yourself being removed from the land, which functions as your library, also as your classroom, then you're moving away from these our indigenous ways of transmitting knowledge from one generation to the next. We can talk of grazing, you can talk of cultivation, and learning about herbal medicine, for example, having sacred sites, having no access to those amounts to this epistemic violence that you're talking about. What is the role of African universities at this time? One of the responsibilities I've been assigned at the University of Toronto is to build local partnerships with local universities and also African universities at large. And I think these are partnerships that has been mainly pushed by our colleagues within African studies, recognizing the importance of these partnerships in advancing self-determination through producing our own research. And that means as well engaging with our African diaspora, building a community, not feeling caged within our own context, but appreciating the planet as our home. Other ways that we can support this work is by creating internship opportunities where students or recent graduates can gain experience, and this can be within government. I'm glad we have state officials here. NGOs, I'm glad we have NGOs here. And of course, at the universities, I'm glad we have academics here. Within African universities, there is room also to create exchange programs, both within the continent and also abroad. And it is our responsibility as academics and researchers to create these opportunities to have these exchange programs so that we are not only participating in the UC in Africa program as either research assistants or instructors, and that ends there. The other one is on funding, applying for funding and co-supervision as well. Exploring opportunities for joint and dual degrees. You can get your degree from Maasai University and Toronto University of Toronto, not just exchange programs. So there are areas that we can be innovative and creative in ways that we can bring research and collaboration across the world using our ability to traverse spaces and in the world of ideas. I think in this way we can make concrete steps towards self-determination through epistemic justice by addressing the ever-evolving forms of epistemic violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. for that very good and very explicit and comprehensive presentation. I was really much tempted to give him the whole time because I think the research is really bringing up a lot of issues. And I think it touches on many things that we have listed, including the 3 objectives. And key things that I've been able to jot down, or let's say put down, is the issue of partnership and opportunities that are available there for both indigenous people, youth, and universities. And again, the issue of conservation and what is involving, the issue of land subdivision, fragmentation, and what come out, what is the impact of that, and the land governance, more particularly at the Mara. He has also mentioned that he has some researches that he's taking, or let's say he's undertaking, particularly at around the Mara ecosystem, one in Older Kesi and nationally Ma Conservancy, and on the issue again of land privatization, he also mentioned the issues of dispossession. When we privatize land, then we have no control of the outcome, the land use, the contradiction of land uses. You get somebody else is doing something, you want to do pastoralism, but somebody else somewhere is doing something, and we see also the mushrooming of so many things that are not really friendly to our way of life and land uses. He also mentioned something on partnership between the universities, and he mentioned somebody can be able to do a degree, or let's say a master's or a PhD at Masai Mara University, at the same time attached to another university somewhere in the world. And I think this is one of the presenters that I think we need to give justice to him by engaging him and get a lot from him. So I would ask the organizers if I can open this movement for the participant also to give their question and maybe get some clarification from our speaker. And I want to thank you so much, my brother. Thank you so much. Can we clap for him? So I would give up about 2 or 3 people. If you have a very burning question related to what we have presented and professors presented, I will give you 1 minute. And direct to the point, we have no time. I think a lot has been said. And so you don't need to labor, try to build on his research on whatever he has presented. So I see Dr. Koisaba, my brother John, I have seen his hand up ahead of us, Professor. Then let me give it to him. And then I see my good friend from Tanzania, Dr. Pia. So those 3, then I'll give the youth. And there must be a girl or a lady. Yeah? Unless kama mnataka ninyongwe. Let me start from John. Direct to the point. We do not really want much addition or comment. If you have questions, it's okay. I know comment always try to be long. So karibu.
Okay. My question is, you mentioned from research assistants to researchers, and how do you transition into that when the researcher is part of the research?
Yes, he mentioned that. Thank you so much. Now, and he actually advised, I don't want to answer that question, but yes, you will answer the question.
Good morning, everybody. Don't want to belabor about everything. One thing I want to say, your net worth is your networking. You become rich, you become great, because you know how to network. Prof.
Wow. From the daktari, eh? Thank you so much, Baba. Tosho ilo baba ngai tupigie yo baba makofi. Yes, so from John, then Professor Koisaba, I have a friend of mine. Sorry, I did not get your name yesterday. Okay. So can you give him? So those 3, then I will go for 2 more. 2 more. Then we get. Okay, karibu.
Hello, my name is Anas again. I'm from Indonesia. And just I would like to ask about the publications. Is there any consent or FPS from free prior import and consent from the community involved? Because before any research before research funding published, yeah, because in Indonesia is the publication of the research funding is very sensitive, yeah. Not all our data from the indigenous community can share publicly, can be shared. Yeah, because some of the data is maybe dangerous for them. Yeah, if we publish for the to the public. That's all.
Asante.
I would like to know how to the mechanism or experience of yours in the country.
Thank you. Dr. Loltaika here, then Dr. Naikuni, then we'll close that chapter. We get the response from Dr. Then from there we will go to another step. You've taken down, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. Prof, you have raised quite some important issues that really sit at the center of what academics refer to as a dichotomy between knowledge producers and knowledge consumers, because the global south is seen as really having only the role of producing knowledge, of consuming probably, and they don't have a seat among knowledge producers. But I wanted to just bring to your attention that the aspect of knowledge holders is now gaining global traction, and probably one of the outcomes of this meeting is to really prioritize how indigenous peoples should be recognized as knowledge holders, because if you bring someone to come and interrogate, it brings aspect of extractivism, where you consider these communities as really places where you go and extract knowledge, and then you bring the aspect of knowledge. But I think for the sake of time, I don't want to annoy my good friend Lawrence. We can engage this conversation, but that is brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daktari Njoria Nekuni. Naona kijana moja, and you know our good GNC can anytime go out and come with a stone and start doing.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Naikuni Daniel, and first of all, I would like to applaud what Professor has presented. I'm a good student of Professor Kariuki, and our brother asked about the ethical issues in terms of publication. In Kenya, there's a control body that controls what you publish, that permits. But in one or the other, there are unethical researchers who mine data and at the same time publish. That means there is less control nationally. So it's a concern, it's a big concern. And I think this is one of the issues that you're going to raise here in pertaining to indigenous issues. The last one is that Prof had mentioned about data in terms of research and so on. But the main cry here is about the indigenous issues because as it is, what has been published mostly is published by the West, and we may not have control of it. There is a lot of challenges that we still go through. The biasness in terms of editorial, in terms of reviewing, and in terms of contribution. So our representation is wanting in terms of publication of indigenous issues, and we need a way to control it.
Last one, and please, you'll be the last one. Yes. What? No, please, just baada yake. One.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you, Professor Kariuki, for a very wonderful presentation. You give us hope as youth, because looking at your age and what you've achieved, it's greatly a lot. My question, straight to the point, how can research education framework be adapted to honor the mobility, ecological knowledge, and cultural theme of pastoral indigenous communities, especially we as the Maasai? How can it be related? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe now we get answers from Professor. Then after, I will give you like 1 minute so that you can say what you have to say and give us more input on the same. So let's give Professor first to answer or respond on those few. And as he continue to answer, I'll be having panelists.
Yeah, thank you. So the first question from John Shadrack here was about the researcher as part of the research. So how do you transition from a research assistant to a researcher? And I think for me, that's actually my story. I started off as, before I went to college, I was a research assistant. And then I gained insights on what research can actually do to impact society, and that's what directed me to that. So, but often enough, there's not the intention for many researchers, unfortunately, to support the research assistants to transition to that. So it is also our responsibility as African academics and scholars to create those pathways to help or to contribute in ways that research assistants transition to researchers and scholars if we are ever going to be our own knowledge producers. And that ties to the question, the last question, on how to tie ecological knowledge, cultural knowledge, or having this being able to conduct holistic research that attends to the multiplicity or the ways of the social relations that we experience, not just in land relations, but more in life relations, as was discussed yesterday by Dr. Andy White. And this is where the value of indigenous ways of knowing, because what I find often is the Eurocentric ways that have been quite dominant. I'm not saying that deprovincialization is doing away with the Eurocentric knowledge. It's more about deprovincializing African knowledge, that is bringing it to the fore and making it global as opposed to only being context specific. And to do that, we need people who understand how they live, because as a Maasai, you learn, and we need to create ways of teaching or pedagogical practices that transmit knowledge from one generation to the next. That was, I think, mentioned here yesterday by our elder. And that way you can make your knowledge count. And as Fanon says, if you do not exist, you talk about how as black people, we've been made as subhumans in history through colonization. But to claim our humanity, our ways of thinking and seeing the world have to be valued. And so epistemic virtue is a confirmation of our existence.
Sorry, I think all questions and concerns were addressed, and I would request that I give Babak Olewisaba just 1 minute to elaborate further. I'm sure he's going to add a lot of good input. So you don't take much time, only 1 minute maybe.
Prof, you know, you made me emotional when you spoke about all those things, because I'm a victim of that. When I was doing my doctorate, which became a book, I was discontinued from my doctorate because I was not quoting any Western or Euro whatever others. Because they can't tell my story. Until I tell my story as a Maasai, nobody can tell my story. Because when they tell my story, they don't tell my story. They tell their story according to how they see me. You know, I almost went into tears when you're talking there.
Okay.
You're my buddy, you're my friend, you're my colleague.
Thank you.
Do you know what? No, you can't tell me thank you. No, you know what? I teach doctoral students innovation. And in innovation, we have what we call interruptive innovations. And you know why the world is changing? Because we interrupt. What we call norms become no norms anymore, because we have to tell our story the way we tell it. This is what I'm saying.
Thank you so much.
I'm interruptive. Kimaren, you'll forgive me for this, eh? You will all forgive me for this. Do you know why? Until we interrupt and tell our story in the way we tell our stories, the world will never understand us. Just forgive me for that. Because of what? I am an innovator. I teach innovation. Why am I saying this? He talked about collaboration. He talked about networking. We are not allowed to. This is the system that has been set to keep on marginalizing us in all spheres of life, be it political, be it in academia. We get marginalized in all these aspects. To cut a story short, this is a first of itself in the history of mankind, in the history of indigenous people. This should be the path to bring our voices where our voices have been denied forever, systematically. So what I'm saying, we have scholars here, we have readers. I'm a grant reviewer, and some of the biggest grants in the world that you people get in science, I review. I have a book on the same. This, for me, is a turn point in my life, because I've learned that we have reached a place in life where we desire to sit on the table where decisions are made globally, nationally, even locally.
Thank you so much, Daktari and Professor. I think what Koisaba is telling us is very key and very elaborate. He's telling us now we need to start having two-eye seeing research approach, where now the research is also part of the research. So you are not just being researched without consent, without permission, without prior informed, but you are involved in the whole process. And thank you so much, Koisaba and the rest. Now we are going to another session, or let's say another step. And now I would call my panelists. We have our sister Jane Meruas, all the way from Samburu. And then we have Professor Had White. These are my two panelists, and they have specific questions to answer or to respond to. So I would request them to come over here. Please, mupigie makofi akikuja. Particularly, pigia kila moja mpaka afike. Yeah, that is to show that you are also part of the team and you are also participating, and I like the way that he's passionate about what is just about to come and do here. She's running, very good. She said yesterday she's 18 until she dies, so young forever. Thank you so much. Karibu here. I would not labor to introduce you. You just really give us a short introduction, particularly Merues, because we've not heard from you yesterday. We heard from Professor yesterday, and you have specific question to answer and or to give us some information on. And Merues will be answering the question, what are some of the lessons learned by Samburu Women Trust in the course of its collaborative research work around women's rights in Kenya? And maybe you go first after your introduction, then you jump into that question, then I will give Daktari his thereafter. So karibuni sana. Introduce yourself.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, young people, elders, women, government officials, and friends of indigenous communities. My name is Jane Meruas. I am an indigenous woman coming from Isiolo County, but I'm a Samburu myself. I lead a team in Samburu Women Trust. Thank you.
I'll give you this opportunity to start answering your question. Then I will also give Daktari thereafter. He will introduce himself, then answer one or two questions. So the question is, what are some of the lessons learned by Samburu Women Trust in the course of its collaborative research around women's rights in Kenya? What have you learned all the way in your own experience, having worked there for some years now? What are the experiences that you can bring or you can tell us about collaborative research around women's rights in Kenya?
Thank you so much, my brother Olembelati. As you've heard that I work with Samburu Women Trust, and we believe that research is not just about numbers and data. It is about voice, lived realities, and knowledge systems that have been preserved for generations. When you talk about research, what we've experienced in Samburu Women Trust is that it's deeply grounded around issues on participatory, community-driven approaches, and the value indigenous knowledge as much as academic framework. For us, research is a tool of empowerment. It is transformed silent into evident and evident into action. What strategies or action do we use when you talk about research focusing on indigenous women, young women, youth, or even elders? we talk about community-led approach. Our approach is deeply participatory. We train indigenous women, youth, to act as community researchers so that they are not just object of research, but active knowledge producers. This has allowed us to document issues like FGM, child marriage, and land right from perspective of those who lived them. It is built ownership, dignity, and trust in a process. The other strategy we use is stories, is documenting our stories. And I'm going to give a practical research that we done within Samburu Trust. Is a silent harmful cultural practices called child beating. One powerful example of our work on child beating for years, this is a harmful cultural practice was most invisible, really spoken about by even Samburus ourselves. It never documented. Through community-led research, we created spaces for women and girls could share their stories without fear, and their voice become evident. That research changed everything. We were able to bring child beating into both county, national, and regional platform, not just as a tradition, as a form of gender-based violence. Our finding was able to inform national dialogue, which shifted debate and perspective, and even influenced policy debate. Today, child beating is recognized as a harmful cultural practice that has ended. A proof that when community lead, there is such change follows. The third one is partnership and evidence-based advocacy. Within Samburu Women Trust, we also work with universities, researchers, and international allies. And together, we are able to co-produce evidence that is credible in policy spaces, but most importantly, we also share findings to the communities. First, because they own the knowledge. This research output have informed campaign against gender-based violence, strengthen indigenous land right advocacy, and shape our conversation on climate change, biodiversity, on women perspective. But at the end, the strength of our research is not the report we produce. Build in transformation, it is Pact. Women who speak up, youth who become knowledge holders and bearers, policy that recognize indigenous realities, and then at SWT, our research remains as a resistant, as resilient, and a pathway for justice. That is all I can say, what we do when you talk about indigenous-led research, and how do we influence policy when you talk about giving voice to indigenous people. How do they collect their data? How do they use that data? How do we make sure that when they occupy spaces, that their policy, that we use them around the issues on pushing our agenda in certain spaces. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my sister, for that very elaborate presentation. I think you will spare question for now. I will go to Daktari, our Professor Adi White from the University of Michigan, Pact member. And the question is, how has indigenous people-led research and education influenced the experience and outcome of the first nation of the US-India carbon market and renewable energy initiatives? I hope you got the question well. And so maybe thereafter we will have a Q&A for both presenters, and then we will continue from there. Thank you so much. And can we clap for our sister?
Yeah, sorry, I had to intervene because I saw Andy was surprised.
I'm happy to answer that question.
Yeah,
as
I mean,
well.
there are two dimensions of this question. I think there was the one you're expecting, the role of Pact as a regional alliance, which is actually part 2. But I think Mary Beth also wanted, or rather was to contribute on this one, and we thought you could help us make sense of the two. And blame the secretariat, not the moderator, for ambushing you. Thank you.
Asante sana, Kimaren. Yes, thank you so much. Now, I think, sorry for the surprise and the ambush. You have now a new question, and you got the reason why we've changed, and maybe you can go ahead now and answer the current question. I'm sure you are prepared.
Okay, could you read this new question again real quick?
How has indigenous people-led research and education influenced the experiences and outcomes of the First Nation of the US in their carbon market and the renewable energy initiatives?
Okay.
Yeah. You can handle both.
Okay, I'll try.
Yes.
But first, I would like to say good morning to everyone and just express how grateful I am and how honored I am, deeply honored to be with all of you. Many of you are people I've been learning from for many years, reading your material. I've had the honor of traveling here before, visiting with Ilepa and the Nashualai Conservancy years ago. So I'm just deeply honored to be here. And I'm so excited and thrilled to see that the room is packed, the enthusiasm of your work and your appreciation for each other. And so I'm just thrilled to be here. So thank you again for the invitation, and thank you again and congratulations to Ilepa for organizing this very important event. Okay, so the first thing I'll address is this question of why is it helpful to have cross-regional alliances to support indigenous-led research and institutions. I think the answer to that question is pretty simple in many ways, and the answer is that, from my perspective, it's because the colonizers have cross-regional alliances that have developed and perpetuated their models and their structures and their institutions. So on your own, anyone on their own can't confront global systems of thinking without having you're developing and creating your own systems and own alternatives. I think across the world, what is so exciting now is to see that indigenous peoples and local community leaders are able to shift from just defending and fighting the colonial systems and spending all of their energy in the trenches to being able to celebrate and generate their own ideas and their own institutions. And I think that's why Pact was created, this Pathways Alliance for Change and Transformation that Arun and Kimaren introduced yesterday. It's a new network, just 2 years old, that was created by Kimaren and of Ilepa, our colleagues from Indonesia, Aman, our colleagues from Nepal, CIPRED, and us at the University of Michigan, and CED Samuel Nguifo, who's spoken several times. Very small network. Its purpose is to promote, raise awareness of the importance of indigenous-led research and education. And I think we did that because many of us knew each other for many years, and many of us spent all of our time fighting the latest bad idea that was generated from the colonial North. Spending all of our time fighting their latest bad idea about climate change, the latest bad idea about conservation. And we were all desperate to change the game, to celebrate and uplift the brilliance, the ingenuity, of indigenous peoples, who, as all of you have been saying, many who preceded me speaking, that, and I've heard this from my colleagues in the US that I work with closely that are indigenous, that innovation, science, research is in the DNA of indigenous peoples. It's the Western concept of research as separating people from nature, separating people even from each other, has been so destructive to the world and to the people of the world. So that's why Pact was created. There had been lots of progress on many other fronts and cross-regional alliances between indigenous peoples. There's alliances to promote sharing and learning on land rights. There are alliances to promote sharing and learning on human rights. There are alliances to promote sharing and learning on finance, where indigenous peoples are beginning to create their own financial mechanisms, like Pawanka, like Amman is developing their own financial mechanisms. So there are other alliances, cross-regional alliances on other issues, but there had not yet been one on research and education, which, as Professor Olesena, I think, reminded us yesterday in his keynote speech, there perhaps is nothing more important than ideas, and nothing more important for humanity, for your own dignity, for your own liberation. And he quoted Paulo Freire about research and innovation and ideas is essential for our own, any individual, any human, for our own self-awareness and dignity, is to be able to celebrate and have your ideas recognized is absolutely essential. So in that way, cross-regional alliances and cross-regional alliances to promote education and research, indigenous-led education, is absolutely essential. It's not an option. Otherwise, we will forever be in the position of fighting the latest bad idea from the North. And otherwise, we will forever be in the position of fighting for the value of our own your own ideas. I'm not indigenous. I'm honored to work with, collaborate with many friends who are indigenous. But that's why it's absolutely essential, not an option. And I think that's why it's such a beautiful, absolutely beautiful thing to see this conference come together. The last year, Pact worked with CPRED to organize a conference in Nepal. The year before that in Indonesia. These conferences, all those conferences, the rooms are full and people are excited, indigenous people are excited. We're talking about research. We're finally talking about ideas, indigenous people's ideas. Finally talking about indigenous education and how essential, absolutely fundamental that is to flip that, and then it will enable the transformation of many of these other global systems. So how Pact has been promoting that over the last few years is, one, conferences like this, collaborating with each other to do conferences. Second, more learning and sharing among each other so we better understand. So a few days ago, the Pact members were on the National Conservancy, as you all know, absolutely path-breaking, brilliant, community-led conservancy that's internationally recognized. The third thing that we have done at Pact so far is begin to generate new global level analyses and research among, produced by these Pact members. So the latest one that we're starting to work on now is well-being, indigenous visions and understanding of well-being. Because again, for decades, this whole development enterprise, economic development models have been based on Western notions of what is development, how do we measure it, what do we call it. And again, until we flip that system, until we flip how we even measure it, talk about it, we'll be forever fighting, incrementally losing our energy fighting the beast one by one. But we have to change the system. And so by changing the way we define it, changing the way we measure it, we'll be able to then have a catalytic effect on changing larger systems that depend on that. So that's it in a nutshell. And on the carbon question, I think this will be very short, and I think two things. One is that in the U.S., indigenous peoples, the different, we use the term tribes in the United States. They're sovereign nations, and as we were reminded yesterday, there's 574 separate federally recognized sovereign tribal nations in the U.S., so it's not a small thing. And of course, many of those indigenous tribes are divided. Some want to participate in the carbon market, some do not. Just like some are actively engaged in mining, some are not, right? So it's been very divisive in the US. And again, I think that is not surprising because they have to confront a colonial model. And they are put in the position of having to respond to a colonial national level top-down model. And so I think there's been quite a bit of progress in the last few years, and I think a major step forward has been indigenous-led research that produced the first ever national level climate change assessment in the US, led by indigenous people and led by, many chapters were led by young indigenous scholars. It was the first ever national level climate change assessment, and it was endorsed by the government. This was the Biden administration, so before the current monster we have in power. So that was a huge step forward. That was the product of decades of investment in indigenous scholars and science and publications. So they created a national level assessment, and that assessment is helping, also included case studies that uplifted the different approaches that different tribes have taken. So not saying that there's one approach that everyone has to take, or there's not one single position that all indigenous peoples are taking, but it's creating a system where they can make their own decisions. But they're setting the framework. They're defining what climate change means to them. And so I think that was a huge step forward. So I think indigenous-led research is, by investing in their ideas, their networks, they're now beginning to really achieve change at a systemic level in the U.S. Thank you. I hope that was what you were hoping for.
Thank you so much. Clap for Professor, and thank you so much for being ready to answer even the most one of the very urgent questions that we did not tell you, but you answered it very well, and thank you so much. So can we clap for them again? And if you are not selfish, could you also clap for me? Asanteni sana. Thank you so much. So I think we will direct question to the two presenters as we wait for 3 or so questions. And I thank you so much, Prof, and our sister, Prof, on the issue of regional organizations or alliance. It is something that is very pertinent, very good, and I think it could be very helpful for the indigenous people if we can encourage that. So I see several hands up, and I'll start from the far end. And I have my brother there. Sorry, names. I will call you your name tomorrow for this session. Forgive me. Then I have our cultural ambassador. 2 questions. Kama umeuliza jana na kuangalia na macho ya kando. Our sister, I'll come back to you, but let me go to the people at the far end. So only 4. So from that end, you and the 2. Then I'll come back to Simon later.
Okay, my name is Clarkson Lugusa, representing Impact Kenya. My question is for Madam Mary Was. In terms of collaboration, regarding access to finance for action research, are there any barriers to collaboration between indigenous-based organizations in landscapes, say, for example, northern Kenya? And if there are barriers, what can be done to, circumnavigate or, ease those barriers? What I'm alluding to is, for example, you find that there's a call for applications for a certain grant, for research grant, and then Organization A, as well as Samburu Women Trust, if they collaborated, that would augment their chances of securing that fund. And yet, or rather, they choose to, apply for that grant individually. So what can be done to, do that? Thank you.
Challenges in grants and what can be the mitigation? That goes to Meriwes. And there is 1 more, 2 more there. And then brief, direct to the question.
Good morning. My name is Rose Orguba, and my question goes to the professor. And there is this thing which is taking the indigenous communities in a big storm now, the carbon project. Actually, I'm from the northern part of Kenya. I'm from Marsabit. And we have this Northern Kenya Rangelands carbon project. And we really don't know who is holding it and who negotiates it for the people, because they just bring us the big money from the carbon project and we don't know how it came. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Direct to the professor, involvement, participation, indigenous people engagement in decision making on issues carbon. Yeah, so that is the thing.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carlo Lepario from Baringo. I represent the indigenous people of Ilchamus from Baringo. And my name is, my question is directed to the distinguished lady from Samburu, Jane Meruas. And as a young person from the indigenous communities of Ilchamus, which also struggle with the cultural practices you've talked about, how can we be effectively engaged or supported to ensure that we sustain the gains you've talked about against FGM, child marriage and childbearing, while also safeguarding our cultural identity, considering the kind of cultural value attached to such cultural practices. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Silent child bidding. That is a question directed to Meruas. So, oh yeah, it's like everybody wants to say something. So, Ambassador, I have one lady here. So I need to have two ladies so that the question can be balanced.
So thank you so much. Again, my name is Larry Oleletolwa, the Cultural Ambassador. Thank you for the presentation. My question is to my sister. So part of what I do is to do in-depth research about our people and their way of life. Bidding, as my sister was talking about, was used long time ago to make sure that all our girls get husbands, whether ugly or beautiful. So we used to bid them to make sure that we don't live a society of ugly women unmarried. We used to bid them to make sure our only underdoing was age. I don't know if we are communicating. I want to researchers, because even right now, as my sister was talking, I was seated here thinking like, at any particular time, we are trying to re-advocate for bidding on this side, but on the age, not underage. So when you go to campus, we'll be encouraging. At bidding was the time I could take a bottle of beer to the father-in-law. My father will come and tell me, I've seen a beautiful girl. My friend has done the ceremonies. Of course, we know what to nurture. But that was the communication. Then I could come to your family, give you the beers, we relate to Nasherekea, it was bonding. So there is just one thing that I was seeing there, and I'll direct that to my sister. When we undo that, and I want you to underline, we do not support underage marriage. We do not support FGM. But whenever we undo something from society, we have to replace it with something equal. Yeah. So is there programs there to make sure that bidding is there? Because right now in Narok, we have so many unmarried ladies. I'm even advocating for bidding. I'll start going to my friends telling them, oh, in our family, we have 2 ladies who are not married. Everybody should be married. And men should add wives. Thank you.
So, Meriwes, the issue of age and the bidding, could we maybe work on the age and that kind of bidding works for ladies? You will answer that question, and I will go to the final question. I beg that we make this one the final one because we are running against time na tumetumia wakati sana. Naomba nisameheni. Sijui kama hiyo ni Kiswahili safi kwa wale wanaelewa Kiswahili.
Test.
Karibu.
Test. Okay. Test. Okay. So I will introduce myself again. My name is Cindy. I'm from BIPAN, the Youth Wings Organization of Amman. So, I want to share a little bit, so I can ask the question. So in BIPAN, the youth, I think we already do the research. Like what we are doing is like we have what the movement we call the homecoming movement, and then inside of this, like also like we have like tracing our ancestors' footsteps. So what we are doing is basically a research, because like we are tracing back what our ancestors already do, and then we documenting what the history of our community and everything, like yeah, the history. So like my question is like, how can we make that like it is a research, but like it is like what we do is also be the materials for the teaching in the indigenous school, but like in like it is not really recognized as a research, because like it's not the conventional way. So like what I want to ask is, how can we make it like can we make so this can be recognized as also as a research?
Thank you.
I hope you get what my point is.
I am sure that is directed to Prof. And I'm sure you must have put it down for answer, or let's say for response. And so now, kindly, the rest of us, maybe in the next session, we will give you time to ask questions. So I would now give my presenters or panelists an opportunity to respond to our questions. Karibu.
Thank you so much, participant. It seems you are very much attentive, and I hope Kiman and my other CSO who are here, maybe in the next conference, we'll do around issues on women, FGM, and other harmful cultural practices. So I'm going to answer the question, the gentleman about bidding, and the other one I think from either Marsabit. I'm going to tie your question. And to answer your question about bidding, first of all, there are no ugly women, so let's begin from there. Every woman is beautiful, so never mention that name in the room that they are women. And when you talk about bidding, I think because we've done a research on bidding across Laikipia, Samburu, Marsabit, because bidding is actually happening in Samburu community. Bidding, I don't think it is done in Masai, Laikipia, Masai, El Chamus, or even Rendile. But Rendile are a bit embracing, because bidding is different from, I think, the dimension you are talking. And you can Google Samburu Women Trust, you're able to see the research around issues on bidding, and you can able to see, because bidding is a human right violation, because in my community, we bid young girls between 9 to 15, and the girl does not have a consent. And you're bidden, nobody involve you that you're going to have sex with the person who is going to become your boyfriend. And when that girl get pregnant, it means it is incest, because the person who is bidding you is your brother, the same clan, and it is incest. So it means if you become pregnant, that pregnancy has to be terminated. Also around issues on human rights violation, it involves around issues on killing, children are going to die, trauma, and name it. So that way we are saying that bidding, it's a cultural, harmful cultural practices, and we don't want it. It's not our culture, it's demeaning to women. About the Maasai, maybe I'll be interested to learn on how it engage, but you're talking about girls-boy relationship. In the university, it's allowed. But it's even right for women not to get married. I don't think it's an issue. It's the decision if I want to get married or I don't get husband. For sure, in community we come from, if I don't get husband, and I have children, I'll have a home. The problem is for men. When you don't have a wife, you'll have a very bad name. I'm going to not to name here. So I don't think it's an issue. To my brother, you've asked around issues on how do we do around issues on collaboration, so that synergies on how to end harmful cultural practices in the community. I think beside the research, it's also the mindset of the community. How do we also do a lot of civic education so that even community can own and develop their own approach? When you talk about harmful cultural practices, it is only the people who understand when you talk about FGM. It is the wearer of the shoe and the survivors who have undergone female genital mutilation. It's only them who are able to develop strategies and approaches to end FGM. So we talk about either set up on governance structures within the community, which are the custodian of cultures are elders, the county government who develop policy, national and other commission. It is important to involve everybody, the young people, the women, the circumcisers, the elders, the mothers of these children, so that they are able to bring their synergies and perspective to develop the policy. You involve them, let them participate, let them be consultant, and let them develop the approach. They feel that this is how we are able to end the harmful cultures within our setup. My brothers from Impact, you ask how do we bring synergies and collaboration in the same landscape that you are working, especially indigenous people, when it comes to around issues on funding, which has become a monster for indigenous people to access huge funding. I think for me, it's to say that we reduce around issues on ignorance. Because sometimes people look at the proposal and say the bureaucracy is too big. Maybe the language there is too complex. And maybe the other thing is also when you look at joint collaboration, sometimes when you talk about Samburu Mentors, there are certain issues that maybe we look at it around issues on gender lens, it's not really attractive. So it means that it's difficult to jointly to develop. But areas that we think there are synergies, I think people are able to collaborate and support. But again, it is also important to talk around issues on funding. Limited access has also remained a challenge for indigenous people, because when resources are limited, also people feel themselves vulnerable, and the landscape they are in, people also scramble for those resources. And sometimes people end up also applying for wrong grants that they are not even relevant to the landscape that you are working. So those are the barriers that maybe I can able to answer. But maybe you can see me, we can talk.
Good.
Pale nje, tuonane kwa mashida ya Northern Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we can go to Professor, and thank you. Can we clap to our sister? Asante sana. So karibu.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate the questions and the comments. First on carbon projects, and I would just say that if anyone is no one is paying money without getting anyone in return, something in return. So if you don't know what you've given away, you don't know why they're giving you the money. And in my experience in many parts of the world with indigenous peoples are becoming involved in carbon projects, they are doing so, of course, with the interest of payments, but they don't know what they've given away. And many times that what they, in effect, have given away is the rights, the ownership of the carbon in their trees, in their bushes, in their soils. And unfortunately, very few countries in the world, very few governments have recognized indigenous ownership of carbon. Many governments, again, this is a Western way of fragmenting resources and into the different components, but in many countries in the world, as we all know, there's not agreement over who owns the land, much less who owns the trees, much less who owns the carbon. So if you're entering into a deal and your government has not clarified ownership over carbon rights and the right to trade that carbon, two different things, who owns it and how is it traded, then you're taking a huge risk. And I've seen many places where indigenous peoples or local communities have entered into carbon projects not knowing exactly what they've given away, only to find out later the people who bought the carbon are coming back and they want to control the land. So in many places, the carbon payment is like a sweet treat that they give you. You become addicted, and later on it kills you because it leads to the land grabbing by external people. So I would say just be very, very careful. There's only a couple countries in the world. Costa Rica is one that have clarified that when indigenous people own the land, they own the trees, they own the carbon. And I understand that's still a debate here in Kenya. And the government has hesitated to recognize indigenous ownership over carbon. So I'd see in many ways the carbon market, because it's unregulated, and that it's like the latest, perhaps biggest ever threat to indigenous peoples, because it could lead to not only the destruction of land, but then, as we all know, identity and control. So be careful is what I would say. There are some places that are doing it where their indigenous people's rights to their carbon are clarified, and it can work. I've seen that work. There's some places in the U.S. where tribes are doing it. It has led to more income for their schools and for their people, but they're fully informed, full FPIC, and the legal framework is there to ensure that they're not abused. On Cindy's great question about publications and research, and very important and for essential information from communities that is collected and often not recognized as research. I guess my reaction is that's a problem with the research, the term of research. That's not a problem with the quality of the work. The work that you are doing and the stories that you're collecting and in the oral histories that you and all of your people have been collecting and maintaining for thousands of years, that is absolutely essential stuff. The fact that it's not recognized in the Western world as peer-reviewed research, that's their problem. And it's a kind of problem, I think, it's another one of these definitional problems. That is a concept that's Western colonial that it's another thing we have to confront. That it has set up this system where the only knowledge that is valued has been peer-reviewed and published in international journals, which are, of course, controlled by a bunch of old white guys like me, right? That's not the way the world should work. So I think the problem is that we have to find new ways to value and disseminate essential knowledge that you want to disseminate, right? And for that to be recognized. It might not ever be recognized in a peer-reviewed journal, but who reads those anyway? I mean, really almost nobody reads those. So that's not even necessarily the way to influence policy and your own self-determination. So I don't think I gave you a very satisfactory answer. I'd be pleased to speak with you more afterwards. But thank you all very much for this opportunity. And I also want to give a shout out to my colleague here, and what an honor it is to be up here on the stage with you.
Thank you very much to our presenters, and a lot, I am sure we've learned a lot, and I think one of the key things is that it's high time for us now to own research and not only see people researching on us, and also we are also trying to change that kind of connotation from the colonialists, where now they just want to give us their own view. It's high time for us to change that view and give them our own view. Thank you so much, Meriwas. I've learned a lot. The silent bidding, and my good friend was trying to amend, and I thank you because you are so much categorical. It is clearly illegal. It is human rights violation. So there is no negotiation. I think that is the word. And I think I want to bring it to an end, this session, and I will call now Kimanen to take over. I see a hand. Only, and now go backward. Can I? No. Okay. No. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry because there are several hands and it will be difficult to... Okay. Daktari here is that he's saying they did a study on carbon, and it's actually another decolonization. I encourage us to have a bilateral discussion. Yes, colonization. Indeed, for sure. So let's let's reach out to him. And if we get a chance in the afternoon in the plenary, I'll give you a minute to explain that. Can we appreciate the moderator, Lawrence, and our great panelists here, Professor Andy White, and our powerful lady leader here, Jane Merwes of Samburu Women Trust. And the state has feted her. Her work has been recognized by the national government. So I don't know whether they call them, what was EGH, is it, or HSC, Head of State Recommendation. So kudos to her. Can you clap to this team as they come down, and we appreciate you. We appreciate you so much. One request, every panelist, I know you have your notes. We may not have given you a chance to do a PowerPoint presentation, but please share your notes to inform our report. So Jane just asked me, where will we send our notes? We will put up an email address for you to do that. Now, as we go to the tea break, let's spend at least about 7 minutes on a Mentimeter. Pull out your smartphone. It is time to see some interesting things about what is happening here. This one is on indigenous well-being. So you now know the grill. You scan the QR code. I don't know, the tech team, are you ready? Elias? You have a mic? We actually have 30 seconds on each question, and then it will move to the next because it's a choice. You just press a button. Elias? Can we get started? Are you ready? Everybody has their own, their tool ready to go. I can see that. Okay. This one is a blank Mentimeter. Oh, okay. Wow. When you hear the word well-being for indigenous, what comes into your mind? Powerful. Look at that. Okay. So when the 30 minutes are over, you just progress, okay? How important is it to identify and track well-being indicators? Is this of any value to track these indicators? I don't see results yet as the voting began. Okay. But the choices, so this is a scale. So 5 being very high. So basically, the main message here is that it is critical to track well-being indicators on indigenous well-being. Okay? That's third question. How effective contemporary well-being indicators? Yesterday, I think a lady from Indonesia talked about the Human Development Index, the income per capita, the poverty line, all these traditional ways of measuring well-being. And do they serve indigenous, do they respond or reflect well-being indicators in the context of indigenous people? Very balanced here. Wow. Contemporary are those ones about poverty line, Human Development Index. Okay? So at least 30%, about 30, a quarter of us say they are relevant, but the rest actually are questioning it. So it means